Thank you. Oh, what the hell? I'm used to explosions, actually. How's everyone doing? Good. I was here last year, and there was 4,000 people. And if you remember, if you were here, I came up, I said, this is a lot of people. This seems like the market top. And it turned out to be basically correct. I actually prefer this with a lot less people. These are the more hardcore people. Last year was a lot of taxi drivers who all wanted to get a Lamborghini or something. But this is a much bigger, more important thing than just making money. This is about changing the world. So I actually put some slides together for the first time in years. I actually planned this a little bit. This is the US national debt. Pretty funny chart. As you can see, before 1971, there wasn't a lot. And then since Richard Nixon temporarily removed the gold backing away from the dollar, we have this now, even with the orange Fuhrer, Donald Trump, who said he was going to balance the budget. He's had the biggest budget deficits in history. Not surprising at all. Actually, you can't stop what's going on now. The US government's going to collapse, the US dollar is going to collapse, the euro is going to collapse, all fiat currencies are going to collapse. And that's something that a lot of people forget about in the crypto space. And a lot of people get really sort of short-focused, narrow-minded, tunnel visioned a little bit. Especially for a lot of us who have been in the cryptos, for me personally, since 2011, it seems like it's a long time. And for some of us, it seems like, wow, it's been so long since cryptos have been around. But it really hasn't. And that's what I want to talk about today, is that we're still incredibly early in the cryptocurrency space. And actually, as I mentioned, I totally love that there's not 4,000 people here right now, because this is when you really make money. So I just saw this post on Facebook the other day. Someone put a comment and it pulled it up. So that was 2015, and I'll read it out. When Bitcoin went from $50 to $700, my newsfeed was littered with chasers who were praying and hoping it would come back to $400 to buy as much as they can. Now with BTC hitting $211 at the moment, not a peep, except for people panicking and killing themselves, LOL. I wasn't joking about killing yourself. Welcome to the market. And actually, I didn't put the comments, but there was a bunch of people who said it's going to zero. We've gone through this before, many times. This is completely normal, what's happened. We hit an extreme peak last year of $20,000 in Bitcoin. I thought that was way too high. I did not expect it to go that high. Now that we're back to $3,000, $4,000, I think this is another sort of buying opportunity. And it's amazing. I'm sure many of you know people like this. When Bitcoin went from a few $1,000s, even $1,000, to $20,000, as it was rising, everyone said, if it just comes back to 10,000, I'm going to buy as much as I can. Or if it comes back to 8,000 or 5,000. Now that it's at 3,000 or 4,000, they're all gone. That's totally typical psychology, and that's why a lot of people don't make money in the markets. But this is completely normal and a very good thing, in my opinion. A very necessary pullback here, and very healthy. But it is still just the beginning. To give some perspective on where we're at, it's good to actually look at numbers and look at what's actually been going on. Because you can get caught up in the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and the panic, and things like that. But if you just rationally look at numbers, things look very different. So this is the average daily value change in Bitcoin since 2010. So this is a daily change, and this is actually pretty huge numbers when you think about it daily. 2010, Bitcoin averaged a daily gain of 0.8%. 2011, very similar, 0.7. 2012, 0.2. 2013, over 1% per day on average. 2014 was the first year that we actually had a negative daily value change on average. And then we go back into the positives. 2015, plus 0.09, not much, but positive. 0.2 in 2016, 0.7 in 2017, and then we reach another year where we have a negative year. Very similar, actually, to 2014. 2014 was a minus 0.25% average daily value. 2018 was 0.33, so it was bigger, but not that much bigger. So this is not irregular. This is not something crazy that's happened. This is fairly normal. And in fact, when I first got into Bitcoin in 2011 at $3, it actually rose to $35. I remember that happening, and it actually fell to 0.00001 cents on the Mt. Gox exchange, which some of you might know about that. That was crazy. But there was a panic, and Mt. Gox had a bunch of problems, and Bitcoin actually fell to less than a cent for a moment. So that was my first Bitcoin experience, going from 3 to 30 to less than a cent. And as you can see, basically since 2010, there's only been 2 years that have been negative years. That's 2014, 2018. A lot of people talk about all-time highs. It's very interesting, of course. Last year, the all-time high was near $20,000 on Bitcoin. What's more interesting to me is to look at the yearly lows, the low of each year. And this is very interesting. So 2012, the low was $4. In 2013, it was $65. 2014, $200. 2015, it was actually a little lower, $185. 2016, $365. 2017, $780. And 2018, basically where we're at, $3,200. If you looked at these numbers, if I said to you, and I covered up, it says Bitcoin, and I said, I have this investment, and here's how it's been performing. $4, $3,000, goes up almost every year. What would you say? You'd say, wow, what is this investment, right? That's why it's important not to get lost in the noise. Because, in fact, we're still in an incredible bull market. When you look at these numbers, who would turn down this sort of returns?
No one.
No one. Yeah, you'd beg for something like that. You would think it's a miracle if you got something like that. So that's why it's important to look at the numbers and be very rational and logical. And actually think about these things and not get caught up in the emotions of the market. And the reason that we're still haven't even begun with cryptocurrencies is because the big money, the institutional investors, those guys in Switzerland with the really nice suits who manage billions and hundreds of billions and trillions sometimes of dollars, they have not come into this market yet. And some of you might know about Bakkt. It's the New York Stock Exchange. The owner is called ICE. They decided they're going to start a cryptocurrency exchange. They initially planned for a launch in November, then delayed to December, then delayed to January, and it's still delayed, and it might be February, March now. When that happens, when institutional money has the opportunity to get into this market, let's look at the amount of money that these people have, that they manage. This is all mostly managed funds. The total worldwide bond market, as of 2009, was $82 trillion. And the total stock market capitalization worldwide is about $70 trillion, for a total of over $150 trillion. At the Dollar Vigilante, we recommend you to have about 20% of your assets in cryptocurrencies. Some people might think that's extreme, but I don't think it's extreme at all. But let's just imagine that 1% of managed funds come into the cryptocurrency space. So 150 trillion just in stocks and bonds. 1% would be 1.5 trillion. I went to government indoctrination camps, so I'm not good at the math, but I think that's about right. $1.5 trillion. If 1% of institutional money comes into this market, there'll be $1.5 trillion trying to get into a market that currently has a capitalization of under $200 billion. I think so, right?
Under 150. So
under 150?
It's 10x.
Yeah. Well, it's more than 10x. When you have a market that is, let's say it's 150 billion, and you want to put 1.5 trillion into that market, the market doesn't go up by $1.5 trillion. As that money starts to come in, it causes what we saw last year, a lot of chasers to come into the market. we'll see, if we see 1.5 trillion come in over the next few years, we will see trillions actually come into the market. And there's no way that the market just goes up by 1.5 trillion. It'll actually go up much more than that. There's actually no way to know. But I would estimate that it would go up, well, we're talking massive numbers. Absolutely massive numbers. Now, that doesn't have to happen. It might not happen. But it could happen, and it should happen. And actually, one of the biggest reasons it will happen, in my opinion, is this chart. We're going to see fiat currencies collapsing in the next few years. We're going to see banks collapsing. Deutsche Bank, I don't know how it's still here, but it's still here somehow. It won't be much longer. It's actually at all-time lows, I believe, right now. We're going to see banks collapse. We're going to see bond markets collapse. We're going to see stock markets collapse. We're going to see fiat currencies collapse. So if you have some assets, what are you going to do? Well, there's really only two places, well, maybe more than two, but there's only two financial assets that are really quite make sense to get into. That'd be precious metals, which I highly recommend at this time, and cryptocurrencies. And they have not come into this market yet. They're about to. So with the launch of BACT in the next few months, it'll be the first time that institutional investors really have an easy way to get into the market. Now, it won't happen overnight. It might take a year or two for all of this to happen, but it's going to happen. And even if it's not 1%, even if it's 0.02%, it's still going to massively influence this market, because this market is incredibly small. If you think about it, $150 billion, well, I guess Jeff Bezos kind of lost half of that recently, but I think he was worth about $150 billion. I guess his wife is worth $70 billion now or something. But the Bezoses could buy the entire market if everyone was willing to sell at this price, which most people aren't, including myself. So we will see so many crazy things happen over the next few years. Hardly anyone has any idea what's going to happen. And for those people who have not gotten into cryptos too much yet, I've heard this so many times. I remember after it went from $3 to $100, so many people said, oh, I wish I would have bought when you said at $3. Then when it went to 1,000, a lot of people said, oh, I wish I bought when you said right around here, buy around $200. I wish I did. There's going to be a lot of people getting into this market. We're still at the very early stages. And we're just starting to see the beginning of this entire ecosystem. So it's actually incredibly good, in my opinion, that there's not a lot of people here, because this is where the opportunities lie. We have yet to begin. Your average person, you go on the street, and they're all zombies here, but if you go out there and you just ask someone about Bitcoin, they've heard of it, and that's it. Do they own any? No. Do they know how to own any? No. They don't know anything. But your average person, this is very, your average person in the entire world has just heard of it now. It's very similar to the internet. I remember the internet when it launched when I heard about it in 1993, I used to go to companies and I'd say, I make websites and you need a website. And the CEO of the company would say, what's a website? And I'd say, it's on the internet. And he'd go, what's the internet? That was 1993. And it actually took about 10 years until people really started using the internet. Now everyone's got it on their phone, and they just use it to look at cat photos and take photos of their food, because they're all zombies. But everyone's on the internet now. So it does take time. It's going to be 10, 20 years sort of a period. But people will come to this market. And how many people have actually bought Bitcoin and used Bitcoin or any crypto? So most people. How many people, when they send it or receive it, and they hear that beep or they see it show up, do you get excited? I do. Yeah, not everyone, but because it's like, whoa, works.
It's like magic.
It's like magic. And no one can stop it. And more people are going to figure that out. It's just going to take time. So we're in a very early stage. This is a great time to get in. If you are new to the space, you're showing up at a very good time. Very similar to back in 2015 when it hit 200. I would have said the same thing then. Great time to start getting into it. Start using it. As the rest of the people start to realize, and as the stock markets collapse, bond markets collapse, fiat currencies collapse, people are going to start to catch on. And once they catch on, there's going to be a rush into this market that will shock the world. So, excellent time to get in. I think I'm almost out of time. I just want to mention I have a conference come up in 1 month in Acapulco, Mexico called Anarchapulco. We have Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano. Oh, thank you. Yeah. And we have actually Cryptopulco. It's 4 full days on the beach in Acapulco, Mexico. So you're all welcome to come down. It's a great time on the beach with a lot of amazing people. So I think I'm out of time. So thank you very much.